Hey, nerds, we are going to do a breakdown of Star Wars Skeleton Crew Episode 3 starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
And I'm David.
So, this episode is titled Very Interesting as an Astrogation Problem that is written by Christopher Ford and John Watts and is directed by David Lowery. Spoiler-free logline of this episode is a mysterious stranger offers to help our heroes. So, David, what are your thoughts about this latest episode of Star Wars Skeleton Crew?
This one gets straight to the story, but there are some parts in the episode that dragged on, but it gets us the main focus on the characters and their stories and get to know what the whole premise of the show is. But I like it, despite that it may drag on a few scenes. It seems that it has a solid path and the towards being very good and makes us more intriguing, saying what's more to it.
For me, I agree with you that it was a solid episode overall, even though it was short. It really leaned to the New Hope with its visuals and tone. And I think that Jod really encapsulates a lot of the Obi-Wan Kenobi mentorship of the kids in the show. Also, I agree with you that the story is really moving along at a very steady pace and it gives reveals as we go along, and they're not leaving it till the very, very end of the show. And that's really nice and really refreshing. The kids are getting much more well adjusted to their adventures, and as we are watching them, they are growing up. They are not overly annoying, and sometimes we get into this trap of kids being very annoying. It reminds me of Short Round from Indiana Jones. He wasn't very annoying. He was a hero, and he was not overly kiddie. So that's my thoughts of the episode so far. So in terms of rating, David, what would you give this episode?
I give it a 7. I was first leaning towards 8. But the problem is that there were some scenes that dragged on too much and just get straight to the point. But I give credit that they did not lose the main point of the whole episode.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to bump it up a little bit. Last week, I gave it a 7 because I was cautiously optimistic about the direction of it. And I said that I might bump it up just to see what will happen subsequently. I think for me, it will be an 8, which is a road trip. It broke some new ground, but also nostalgic in a very good way. It's sprinkled in throughout the whole episode. And we saw a lot of that in the first 2 episodes as well, those sprinkles here and there of A New Hope. And I think that it's a testament to the good writing of Christopher Ford and John Watts, who are also the creators of this show, to have that in there. And John Watts, we know, have had a very good reputation so far with the Spider-Man Homecoming series, being in that world already and doing a very good job with those 3 movies really gives him some credence, and bringing his take on Star Wars has been very refreshing for Star Wars fans. If you like what we have to say about Star Wars Skeleton Crew and other content we put out there, please like, share, subscribe for more. We really appreciate your support, and we really appreciate all the followers on all of our social media platforms. So without further ado, spoilers ahead. So we start off with the first scene where the safety droid comes into focus here. The safety droid is giving all this bureaucratic mumble jumble to convince the parents that you don't have to worry about this. This is outside our jurisdiction, and giving them the runaround. And it seems still the parents are at a loss of what to do. I think that if I was a parent, I would be very concerned and maybe take a ship and fly to search for them. But of course, the galaxy's big, so they don't even know where to search. I think that later on, you'll find out that they have like hundreds of thousands of plans. So it's very difficult for them. They really are at a bind to figure out how to do it. And again, it's a good plot device for them to stay out of this show in a lot of ways. We get to see at the very end of the second episode, Jod, who has Jedi powers. And this is a scene where he's trying to escape with the kids to go back onto the ship, which is called the Onyx Cinder. David, what are your thoughts about Jude Law's character? Do you think that he is in it for himself, like a Han Solo, or he has more virtue like an Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I'd say he's more towards Han Solo, is in for himself. And as he do the jailbreak, it's alerted that he is Captain Slevo. Because as he was skating with the kids, there was an alert that the Captain Slevo escaped. But as for Jude Law's character, aka John, he's more for himself because from the beginning of the show, we feel like his character is looking for a big score. Ever since those kids, they're from Aden, he keeps thinking it's a myth. He thinks it's something bigger than that. So he figured that he can use these kids and their ship to pinpoint how to get there and get the biggest score on his own. Well, the thing is that he is a Force user. So I'm thinking whether he is from the Jedi Order or from the Sith. We don't know yet. But later on, you get to see they're escaping and the kids were being suspicious and everything. While Wim is still fascinated that he did some Force abilities. And then we get to see John again, as the kid said, we can't leave without SM-33, which he found. And then there was some confrontation after he saved them as they escaped from the pirate dock.
Yeah, the pirate dog was definitely a very nice action set piece. And I think that when you said earlier in the spoiler-free part, was it here that you felt as though it was dragging, or was it somewhere later on in the episode?
Here and later on in the show. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so we see a nice cameo from the Jawas as well. So again, this is what I was talking about in the spoiler-free part. Some sprinkles here and there of nostalgia that we get from the good parts of A New Hope. And here, I think this is another part where it might have dragged a little bit longer than it should, where he's confronted by one of his shipmates and he's trying to stall for time and had this conversation about him being, oh, are you going to be able to find treasure? It reminded me a little bit of him being Captain Jack Sparrow. He is Crimson Jack, where Brutus is basically playing the Barbossa role. I think you're right. It did drag in this point, and they were able to escape. There was a nice action set piece where they were trying to escape, but the fuel line was there. And then they pulled in episode 7 where they try to jump into hyperspace. Very similar to what Han Solo did in that movie. We get to see a quick shot of Jaleel White here and with Brutus. So he reminds me somewhat of Yondu. Put a body on his head. And I was like, that's pretty much like Yondu right there. So they're borrowing here and there heavily from a lot of the Disney properties. And again, it's subtle, but as nerds, you get where it's all coming from. This is where you were talking about trust. Fern is the one that really is the doubter, that I don't really trust you. Whereas Wim and Neil is just a follower. He just follows what Wim will say. But Wim is definitely a Jedi stan, and just as we saw in the first episode, they're both really interested in the Jedi arts. And then also he checked Fern by saying, oh, you don't know anything about the Jedi peacekeepers of the galaxy. I just found that very amusing that he knew so much about the Jedi. And so my question to you, David, is that how does Win know so much, whereas the other ones are just like, huh, what are you talking about? Is he just a nerd about Jedi, or is it common knowledge that the people at Aden knows about the Jedi?
Thing is, though, we don't know the whole story of Aden because it seemed to, even the City George said that they don't know anything beyond the barrier. Even these kids don't know about the barrier. It was even their scene later on that the only planets that they know of is Coruscant and Alderaan, which, as John's character said, oh wow, you didn't know about that. I mean, it makes me think that the time where this is way before the Jedi and the Sith. That's the only thing I can think of because they never mentioned anything about Sith. So.
Right. And KB is another doubter of John's intentions here, but she's definitely more mathematical about the situation. I think she mentioned about the odds is that you'll betray us and leave us for dead. We get to this planet, so John is trying to find an old friend, alluding to Lando Calrissian, and I'm just thinking, oh yeah, like Empire Strikes Back. So they go on to this moon, which is visually stunning. It brings out a lot of the nostalgia, a lot of the 80s feel of the colors and the lighting. It's just really amazing. And this is a callback to episode 6 with the bulbs communicating. And then they enter this individual's hideout, which we end up knowing her name is Kim. Kim is an old friend of Jod. And this is where you were talking about, David, that she reveals he has another name, Crimson Jack, and that he's a wanted scoundrel / fugitive pirate. What is your feeling about Kim's appearance in this episode?
It's pretty surprising. I don't know what to think of it because obviously it's not a new character. And the voice of Kim is actually Alia Swatcat, who is known in her roles in Arrested Development. She was in a horror comedy film, The Final Girls, A State of Grace, and also The Old Man. So she's somewhat well known. But anyway, back to the character Kim. We never seen an owl-like being in Star Wars universe. This is a new one for me. Before John and the kids came into this hideout, I contacted the Rebel Patrol Force, let them know that this guy is wanted and they call him to come over here as fast as possible and telling them to stall them. So I guess there's something going on. But then Kim is very knowledgeable because when Kim asked them, "Where are you kids from?" and then the kids answered at Aden, and she's shocked. And she brought the map that ended up showing 9 planets and explained to them that at Aden was thought to be a myth because it was the only planet that's part of the old republic hidden. They did not explain why was it hidden. Even the kids have no idea. There's even a scene there where they wonder, do we have treasure on our planet? And they had no idea. They even wonder about why the ship over at their planet in the first place and never noticed it. So that brings another mystery.
I just like the fact that their mysteries are well thought out. They are resolving some of the mysteries as we go along, and then moving forward with new mysteries. It's almost like a video game. One example of that was when Jod was called out whether or not he's a Jedi. And then he's like, "I'm not a Jedi." Maybe he's lying, maybe he's not, but he was much more definitive in how he delivered that response, which begs the question that whether or not he is or not. I think that the tone in which he delivered it maybe was able to resolve some of that question. You mentioned here, David, about the X-Wings, the first class X-Wings. Again, this is a nice shot of the X-Wings coming in. Kim was trying to stall for time, and they were coming in. This is a nice shot of the X-Wings, like the trench run in Star Wars: A New Hope. Again, another nice sprinkle that's in there. There's this tension between the kids and Jod because they actually do need each other. And we don't really know how it's going to transpire as we go along. But right now, it's almost like a marriage of convenience. How do you feel about that, David?
It's a very good analogy, and I agree with you on that because obviously the kids don't know how to fly a ship. And Jod wants to get away from the planet and there while at the same time getting a score. Jod did say that I did not lie and I did not say I was ever a Jedi because Wim just flat out say the Jedi. Because again, Wim has no idea of the Sith. If you look back in episode 1, there is no mention of Sith there. So there's something really going on at Aden. We don't even want to know why the old Republic keep it hidden.
Speculate it's more of a utopian, that they wanted to keep everything sheltered. The barrier is there for not to let them out. Maybe it would have been a social experiment that they wanted to have, because if we remembered at Aden, there's much more of an idyllic suburban neighborhood that they had. And so they wanted to have those planets there, but somehow, some way, the other planets got destroyed because maybe the social experiment didn't work in those places, and that Aden was the only one that worked. And we also had the hints of the credits that was there was from the old Republic. So they're probably, as we move along, going to try to allude to it more and more as we uncover this mystery of the old Republic, and hopefully get some more background information on it, because it is an area that hasn't been explored in the Star Wars universe just yet. So any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I'm just very curious about Jod's character and also more about what's so significant about Aden and why it was hidden, which we'll find out later, hopefully.
Those are our thoughts about Star Wars Skeleton Crew Episode 3. We would like to hear what you have to say about this episode. Please comment down below. Like, share, subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you in the next video. All right. Take care, everybody.